Scientists have just identified the oldest dog ever confirmed through genetic evidence. It lived approximately 15,800 years ago in what is now central Turkey. The animal's remains were recovered from Pınarbaşı, a rock shelter on the Anatolian plateau. But because ancient dogs looked so similar to wolves, researchers couldn't just examine the bones and decide which one it was. Early dogs didn't have the dramatically different bodies we see today. There were no pugs, dachshunds, or dogs that look like small Ottomans. Most would have still looked fairly wolf-like, and this has caused a major problem for archaeologists trying to determine when dogs first became dogs. There are canid remains more than 30,000 years old that have been described as possible early dogs because of the shape of their skulls or teeth. But appearances can be misleading. When scientists have managed to recover DNA from some of these older specimens, several turned out to be members of extinct wolf populations instead. Apparently, identifying a dog becomes considerably harder when it's been dead for 30,000 years and can't respond to "who's a good boy?" Until now, the oldest dog confidently identified using nuclear DNA was approximately 11,000 years old. This new specimen pushes that direct genetic record back by almost 5,000 years. Researchers were able to extract ancient DNA from the remains and compare it with genomes from modern dogs, ancient dogs, and wolves. Genetically, it fell clearly on the dog side of the family tree. But this wasn't simply a wild animal that just so happened to die near a human campsite. At Pınarbaşı, the researchers studied the remains of neonatal and juvenile dogs that had been placed in the same area as human burials. The way they were treated after death suggests that these animals already had some kind of social or symbolic importance to the people living there. We don't know if they were viewed like how we view pets today, but they weren't being treated as ordinary wildlife either. The researchers also examined chemical signatures preserved in the bones. Different foods leave different patterns of isotopes in an animal's tissues, giving scientists a rough record of what it had been eating. At Pınarbaşı, the results suggested that the dog's diet included freshwater fish. Small fish remains were also common in the layers occupied by humans, meaning the dogs were probably receiving food either directly from the people or by scavenging around their camp. So nearly 16,000 years ago, humans may have already been sharing food with their dogs. The discovery is important because dogs were the first animals humans domesticated. They joined us before sheep, cattle, or cats, and long before people settled permanently into farming communities. Exactly how that happened is still one of the biggest unanswered questions in animal domestication. One possibility is that less fearful wolves began hanging around human camps to scavenge leftover food. Humans may have also deliberately raised wolf pups for useful behavior or to form hunting partnerships with them. But there probably wasn't one dramatic moment when somebody pointed at a wolf and announced that it was now called Biscuit. Domestication would have been a long process involving both natural selection and human choices. And the newly identified dog doesn't tell us exactly where that process began. In fact, genetic evidence suggests that dogs already diverged substantially from wolves before this animal was even born, possibly more than 24,000 years ago, although the timing remains uncertain. The Pınarbaşı dog therefore isn't necessarily the first dog, but it is the oldest one that scientists can prove was a dog using strong genetic evidence. And it wasn't alone. The same research identified dogs at sites stretching from Turkey to Britain. Other evidence placed closely related dogs in Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. By at least 14,000 years ago, dogs were already distributed across a huge portion of Western Eurasia. What makes this even more interesting is that the humans at these sites weren't one single population. They were diverse. Yet, their dogs were surprisingly similar to one another. The dogs found had DNA closely related to the ancestors of modern European and Middle Eastern dogs, including lineages represented today by breeds such as Boxers and Salukis, then to Arctic dogs such as Siberian Huskies. That doesn't mean the discovered Pınarbaşı dog looked like a modern boxer. It probably still very much looked like a wolf. But some of the genetic divisions among modern dogs today may have already been developing near the end of the Ice Age. Anyway, we still don't know the Pınarbaşı dog's name. We don't know whether it helped hunt, guarded the camp, played with children, or simply just followed people around waiting for fish. But the evidence tells us something familiar. Humans fed these animals. They traveled with them, and when some of them died, they were placed near human graves rather than discarded like ordinary animal remains. And that makes this discovery so sweet. It tells us that the relationship between humans and dogs was already established long before villages, farming, and even civilization as we know it. Having dogs as companions was one of the first things that ancient humans did. Liked what your weird brain just learned? Hit subscribe. If not, that's okay, but just know if you don't, my dog will be disappointed in you.